The sun hung low over Washington, D.C., casting long shadows across the bustling streets. Detective Jameson was a 15-year veteran of the Metropolitan Police Department, known for his no-nonsense attitude and razor-sharp instincts. His reputation had earned him respect among colleagues and fear among criminals, but also carried with it an unspoken arrogance that often blurred the lines between confidence and prejudice. Jameson's day began like any other, responding to calls, filing reports, and patrolling neighborhoods where crime rates were climbing faster than anyone cared to admit. But as he drove through downtown later that afternoon, something caught his eye: a man standing near a parked black sedan, wearing a tailored suit and sunglasses. To Jameson, this figure seemed out of place in the gritty urban landscape. The detective slowed his cruiser, his gaze narrowing as he took in details: polished shoes, a badge clipped to the belt, but no uniform. In his mind, these elements didn't quite add up. His gut told him there was something off about this guy. Was he waiting for someone? Conducting surveillance? Or worse, was he casing the area for trouble? Jameson's internal alarm bells rang louder when he noticed how casually the man leaned against the car, seemingly unconcerned by the passing patrol vehicle. That demeanor struck Jameson as suspiciously calm, almost too confident for someone who didn't belong here. In less than 10 seconds, years of ingrained biases kicked into gear. The well-dressed black man in front of him wasn't just another citizen. It was a potential threat wrapped in designer clothes. Without even realizing it, Jameson had already started building a narrative around the stranger based solely on appearance. This is what happens when assumptions take root before facts have time to breathe. They distort reality, shaping decisions before logic can intervene. As Jameson pulled over to investigate further, one thought dominated his mind. Who does this guy think he is? It never occurred to him that maybe, just maybe, appearances weren't deceiving at all, and that within moments, those very assumptions would come crashing down on him. Jameson stepped out of his patrol car with practiced authority, his hand resting instinctively on the holster at his side. "Sir," he called out, his voice sharp and commanding, cutting through the hum of traffic behind him. "Can I see some ID?" The man turned slowly, removing his sunglasses to reveal piercing eyes that locked onto Jameson without a hint of intimidation. He reached into his jacket pocket deliberately, pulling out a leather wallet and flipping it open to display a gold FBI badge. "Agent Marcus Hale," he said evenly, his tone measured but firm. "I'm here on official business." But Jameson barely glanced at the badge. Instead, his focus zeroed in on the way Hale carried himself: calm, composed, almost dismissive, and it only fueled his growing suspicion. "FBI." Jameson shot back skeptically, stepping closer. "You don't look like you're doing much investigating right now." Hale raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Detective," he replied coolly, "if you'd bother to check your radio updates, you'd know I've been coordinating with your department all week. This isn't my first time in D.C., and it won't be my last." That comment hit a nerve. Jameson bristled visibly, his jaw tightening as if he'd been personally insulted. "Listen," he snapped, pointing a finger inches from Hale's chest. "You might have some fancy federal title, but you're still standing in my jurisdiction. You don't get to waltz around acting like you own the place." The tension crackled between them, thick enough to cut with a knife. Hale straightened slightly, his posture shifting ever so subtly. Not aggressive, but undeniably assertive. "I'm not here to step on toes," he said, his voice steady despite the rising hostility. "But let's get one thing clear. You questioning my credentials or motives doesn't make either of us look good." Jameson scoffed loudly, throwing his hands up in mock disbelief. "Oh, please, spare me the lecture. If you're really FBI, then why are you dressed like you're heading to a board meeting instead of working a case? Don't tell me you forgot your trench coat back at headquarters." It was a cheap shot, meant to rattle Hale, but the agent didn't bite. Instead, he slipped the badge back into his pocket and crossed his arms, studying Jameson with an expression that bordered on pity. "Detective Jameson," he said, enunciating every syllable of the name he'd clearly memorized earlier. "You're letting your assumptions cloud your judgment. And trust me, When word gets out about how you treated a fellow law enforcement officer today, people will remember." For a moment, silence hung heavy between them. Jameson opened his mouth to retort, but Hale cut him off with a curt gesture. "Save it," he said flatly. "I'll call internal affairs myself, if I need to. Now, unless you plan on arresting me, which, frankly, wouldn't end well for you, I suggest we both get back to work." Jameson froze, his face flushing red beneath his cap. For all his bravado, he suddenly realized he'd backed himself into a corner, one where his pride and prejudice had left him dangerously exposed. And then, as if fate itself decided to intervene, a second patrol car screeched to a halt nearby, its lights flashing. Out stepped Captain Reynolds, Jameson's superior, who had been alerted to the escalating situation via dispatch. One look at the scene told him everything he needed to know. "Jameson!" Reynolds barked, striding toward them with unmistakable fury etched across his face. "What the hell is going on here?" Before Jameson could stammer out an explanation, Hill spoke up calmly. "Captain, this won't take long. Your detective seems confused about protocol, and perhaps a refresher course on professionalism wouldn't hurt either." Reynolds didn't respond immediately. Instead, he fixed Jameson with a glare so intense it felt like a physical blow. Then, without another word, he pulled out his handcuffs. The air was thick with tension as Captain Reynolds approached, his movements deliberate and authoritative. "Detective Jameson," he began, his voice carrying the weight of command, "you are under arrest for misconduct and abuse of power." The words hung in the air, stark and final. Jameson's eyes widened in disbelief, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Captain, you can't be serious," he protested, his voice rising in panic. "This is a misunderstanding." Reynolds' expression remained stern, unyielding. "Misunderstanding? You disrespected a federal agent, questioned his integrity without cause, and allowed your biases to dictate your actions. That's not just a mistake, Jameson. It's a violation of everything we stand for." As Reynolds moved to secure the handcuffs around Jameson's wrists, the reality of the situation began to sink in. The once confident detective, now reduced to a suspect in his own narrative, struggled to comprehend the swift turn of events. His protests fell on deaf ears as Reynolds recited the Miranda rights, each word a hammer blow to Jameson's ego and career. Nearby pedestrians paused, some filming the scene with their phones, while others whispered amongst themselves. The spectacle of a decorated officer being led away in handcuffs was not something witnessed every day. For Jameson, the humiliation was palpable, compounded by the knowledge that his actions, or rather his assumptions, had led directly to this moment. Hale stood aside, observing the proceedings with a mixture of satisfaction and solemnity. He knew the importance of accountability in maintaining the integrity of law enforcement. As Jameson was placed into the back of the patrol car, Hale caught Captain Reynolds' eye and nodded slightly, acknowledging the difficult decision the captain had made. "Let this be a lesson," Reynolds addressed the small crowd that had gathered, his voice resonant and clear. "We uphold the law, and we hold ourselves accountable. No exceptions." With that, he closed the door of the patrol car, sealing Jameson's fate, at least for the immediate future. As the car pulled away, the street returned to its usual rhythm, but the ripple effects of those 2 minutes would resonate far beyond the asphalt and concrete of downtown D.C. For everyone involved, it was a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked bias and the critical role of leadership in enforcing justice, even when it means turning the lens inward. The aftermath of Jameson's arrest rippled through the department with the force of a tidal wave. Within hours, news of the incident spread like wildfire, igniting heated discussions in squad rooms, during briefings, and even in casual conversations over coffee. Officers found themselves grappling with uncomfortable questions about implicit bias, professional conduct, and the delicate balance between authority and accountability. For many, the event served as a mirror reflecting systemic issues they had long ignored or dismissed. Some argued that Jameson's behavior was an isolated incident, while others admitted it was symptomatic of deeper problems within the culture of policing. Captain Reynolds wasted no time addressing the fallout. At an emergency department-wide meeting the following morning, he stood before rows of officers, his expression grave yet resolute. "What happened yesterday isn't just about one man's mistake," he began, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "It's a wake-up call for all of us. Every badge we wear carries responsibility, not just to enforce the law, but to embody it. When we fail to live up to that standard, we undermine public trust and our own integrity." Reynolds went on to outline sweeping reforms aimed at fostering transparency and accountability. Mandatory implicit bias training sessions were scheduled for every officer, regardless of rank or tenure. A new anonymous reporting system was introduced, allowing employees to flag inappropriate behavior without fear of retaliation. Perhaps most significantly, Reynolds announced the formation of a civilian oversight committee to review complaints and provide external accountability. These measures weren't merely punitive. They were designed to cultivate a culture of introspection and growth. Meanwhile, Agent Marcus Hale became an unexpected symbol of resilience and dignity. In interviews following the incident, he emphasized the importance of mutual respect among law enforcement agencies. "This isn't about pitting local police against federal agents," he stated during a press conference. "It's about recognizing that we're all part of the same mission, to protect and serve. Respect isn't given because of rank or title. It's earned through action and integrity." Hale's measured response drew widespread admiration, not only from the public but also from his peers. Fellow agents praised his composure under pressure, noting how he defused a volatile situation without resorting to aggression or grandstanding. His approach underscored a key principle of effective leadership. True strength lies not in domination, but in restraint and wisdom. For Jameson, the road ahead was steep and unforgiving. Suspended pending investigation, he faced the prospect of disciplinary hearings that could end his career. Yet, even amidst the storm of criticism, there were murmurs of sympathy. Some colleagues privately acknowledged that Jameson's downfall stemmed not solely from malice, but from unchecked biases and institutional blind spots. While accountability was necessary, they argued, so too was rehabilitation. Could Jameson emerge from this ordeal transformed? Or would he remain trapped by the same attitudes that led to his undoing? Ultimately, the incident forced everyone to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and their profession. It reminded them that leadership isn't defined by rank or authority alone, but by the courage to hold oneself and others to the highest standards. And in a world where judgment can cost everything, humility and self-awareness may well be the most powerful tools of all. Reflections beyond the uniform. In the days that followed, the story of Detective Jameson and Agent Hale reverberated far beyond the precinct walls, sparking conversations in living rooms, classrooms, and workplaces across the nation. It wasn't just a tale of one man's downfall or another's vindication. It was a microcosm of the larger societal struggles surrounding bias, accountability, and the human capacity for change. The narrative invited reflection. How often do we let snap judgments dictate our actions? What does real leadership look like when authority is challenged? And perhaps most importantly, how can we learn from mistakes without perpetuating cycles of harm? The core truth revealed in this incident was both simple and profound. Assumptions are dangerous. They strip individuals of their humanity, reducing them to stereotypes or caricatures shaped by preconceived notions rather than lived realities. In Jameson's case, his assumptions about Hale weren't born in a vacuum. They were nurtured by years of societal conditioning, reinforced by media portrayals, cultural narratives, and institutional practices that normalize racial profiling. Yet, as the events unfolded, it became painfully clear that clinging to such biases doesn't just harm others. It ultimately undermines the person holding them. Leadership, too, emerged as a central theme, not the kind rooted in power or hierarchy, but the quiet, steadfast kind that inspires through example. Hale's poise under pressure demonstrated that true leaders don't need to shout to command respect. Their actions speak volumes. By refusing to escalate the confrontation, he upheld the values of professionalism and integrity, even when provoked. His measured response offered a blueprint for navigating conflict with grace and purpose, proving that authority isn't diminished by restraint, it's amplified. Perhaps the most poignant takeaway is the idea of redemption through accountability. While Jameson's actions warranted consequences, they also highlighted the potential for transformation. Mistakes, no matter how egregious, don't have to define us forever if we're willing to confront them honestly and commit to growth. For society at large, this means creating systems that not only punish wrongdoing, but also encourage learning and reconciliation. After all, progress isn't achieved by casting stones. It's forged through collective effort to build bridges where walls once stood. As the dust settled, one undeniable fact remained. Judgment comes at a cost, but so does complacency. The challenge lies in choosing which risks we're willing to take. The risk of confronting uncomfortable truths or the risk of staying silent while injustice persists. In the end, stories like these remind us that the path forward isn't always easy, but it's worth walking nonetheless.